for two. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for two. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this. Multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Dynasty Land Personal League Podcast. I am your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can find me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, we are here tonight to break down your league. It's a 12-team league. We're going to meet the crew here real quick, and I'll tell you how this is going to go after this. We got first up, we got Mr. Kyle Senra. He is a host on the Going for Two Live Network. He hosts the Press Coverage Podcast, also hosts the Dynasty Gambit on Thursday nights. You can follow him on Twitter at Senra Says. What's up, Kyle?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here for doing another PLP. Thanks for the Dynasty Land. Hopefully we can help land you a championship this year with all this advice we're going to give.
Good stuff.
I landed that joke finally.
Yeah. Shane's shaking his head over there. All right. Yeah. Next up, we have Shane. You can follow him on Twitter at FFShaneB. And Shane, I'm gonna let you kind of plug yourself here. You got the Poly League going on. You got what's your show called? Just give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always love doing PLPs. Like to set the tone for shit talking, so be ready. But you can find me on Twitter, like Jeff said, at FFShaneB. My podcast is Red Zone Redemption. You can follow that account on at FFRZ Redemption. And then, like Jeff mentioned, I'm running a charity tournament. You're going into year 4. It's called Polly's Playoff. It's a tournament to end Alzheimer's. Donation $10 straight to the Alzheimer's Association. Got some cool prizes. Work on a couple more. So come sign up, because if you do and we get to 240 people, a friend of ours is donating $240. If we get to 480 people, he's going to donate $480. So sign up.
Good stuff. All right. Next up, we got Zach. He is a writer, ranker, and podcaster on the Going for Two Live Network, and you can follow him at Behind the Zach. What's up, Zach?
What's up? Glad to be here. Glad to do another PLP as always. Looking forward to breaking down these teams.
Good stuff. And last but not least, the guy with the internet issues has been popping in and out of the show here so far. We have, it says Kyle Senra on his screen there, but that is not correct. That is Jerry Wilkie. And he is the host of the Fantasy Assessment, the newest show on the Going for Two Live Network, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jerry Wilkie. Is it Jerry Wilkie FM?
Yes,
that's right. Okay, I remember off the top of my head because you have the wrong name down there. All right, guys, this is how it works. We gave your team rosters to these 4 gentlemen, and they ranked them in order of the order in which they would want to take them over, with 12 being the team they want to least take over, and 1 being the team they would want to most take over. And from that, we created a ranking, which we'll count down tonight. We'll go 12 to 1. And each one of these guys has 3 teams to be the quote unquote expert of. When we get to that team in the countdown, they will break down your team, giving you some trade advice, maybe give you your strengths, your weaknesses, things you can do to improve your team. Let's go ahead and jump right into it with number 12 here.
Number 12.
Number 12 team ranked as high as number 11 and as low as 12, and it is Legion of Doom. And Kyle, this is your team. Give me your breakdown here.
We don't want to necessarily spell doom for this team. I'll start with the good news. This wasn't a consensus, or it was a consensus 12, but it wasn't a unanimous number 12. So not everyone ranked them at the bottom. I know actually there was one interesting thing about this league. There was of the 12 teams, no one was unanimously ranked in the same spot. So I guess this is the first year of this league, I think, recent startup, or not a lot of the picks have been traded. So it does seem like it's, fairly well balanced. And I think, since it's super flex, I always start the rankings off like, trying to figure out what the rankings are going to be, looking at the quarterback rooms. And to me, there were 3 quarterback rooms where I was really less certain of than the rest of the league. And those ended up being the teams I ranked as the bottom 3, including this team that I did rank at 12. And it starts with the starting quarterback. There's only 2 technically starting quarterbacks on the team. There are 3 quarterbacks on roster, but you got Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew. So smart to have Minshew as Richardson's handcuff, especially with literally no depth at quarterback. Also Jordan Love. The concerning thing here is there's, taking out Minshew, of course, between the 2 projected starters, there's a combined 1 NFL start at this point. So complete unknowns. This can go in a lot of different directions. This is a team that I guess, the quarterback room I don't like, but I also don't like the construction of the roster and the build behind it in a lot of different areas. One of which is you've got 2 young quarterbacks. We assume Richardson's going to start most of the season, health provided, but should start week 1, but maybe not. But I guess you've got the insurance on Minshew, but it still seems like with Jordan Love, and I'm a Packers fan, but I don't know about the upside on Jordan Love and how good he can be. Maybe Zach, the other Packers fan here, will have a different answer. But I don't know. I feel like, especially as a QB2, this team could really struggle. So keeping flexibility, I think, is important. Keeping the 24 first, I think, is imperative. If you are ever going to trade that pick away, it's probably best to do it next year during the rookie draft, if at all, if not straight up just taking the player there. But then, a lot really young at a lot of different positions seems like it could be a long-term team build that could compete. The window could be open for a while, but it may not just be open that much right now. And it might be difficult now. And then you see it wide receiver, Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill. 2 very elite producing receivers that are, I think Kupp is already 30 and Hill might be approaching that really close, kind of shortening that window. So I think that it's picking the direction in either way. If you do feel like as Legion of Doom, you want to go in and win right now, I think the best thing to do is probably get a quarterback upgrade. Maybe that means trading Jordan Love for somebody, but I think, if you really want to win this year, I think you need a better quarterback too in that super flex spot as opposed to Love. So that might be difficult. Depends on how the league values quarterback. The other option, I think, is selling either or Kupp and Hill, or probably both even. And from there, that might be how you get a third quarterback, and you actually can have a quarterback room with some depth and some streamability. I think, I think that's probably the position to address. So if you can sell at least one of those receivers for a younger quarterback, that's probably like the first move to make. I would say the other aspect of this team in terms of roster build I don't like is just the sheer number of tight ends I think there are league members in the chat, so correct us if we're wrong, but I'm not seeing any tight end premium scoring, no extra points per reception for tight ends. And frankly, I think this team probably could use more depth at running back. That'll be a common theme I always say, right? No one ever has enough running back depth. There might be one team in this league that does, though. But I think I count 7 tight ends on this roster, where I think the ideal thing is, size maybe 3, max 4. But to go, so I'd cut at least 3 of these tight ends and try and replace them with running backs off the waiver wire. Hakeem Butler to me is such an easy cut. I mean, at this point of his career, he's not done anything, and he's been in the league long enough. I don't, he's converted tight end. He used to be a receiver, and sometimes we've seen that type of player take longer as a tight end. But I just think Hakeem Butler, especially on the situation he's on, Pittsburgh's another team like the Packers. I don't really trust the quarterback as a high upside player. I don't think you're going to be a force multiplier, get lots of good fantasy production, lots of touchdowns thrown. So I think Hakeem Butler's an easy cut. From there, the one thing that's difficult to do, though, is looking at potential. I don't know if they had a rookie draft in this league, or if there was all these rookies were taken in the startup. But to be too many rookie tight ends here in a non-tight end premium scoring league, Zach Kuntz and Cameron Latu, I think.
Somebody answered you in the chat, Kyle. It is tight end premium, 2 point PPR for tight end. So that wasn't on the scoring sheet that I took from CBS. So either I missed something or it was changed.
Well, that changes some analysis actually throughout some other themes, but still, I think Hakeem Butler is expendable for sure.
I agree.
Even in the 2-point tight end, you can maybe flex tight ends, but uh, I guess my big issue is there aren't enough flex spots to necessarily make that difference. Like you can play 3 of these tight ends max per week. I guess maybe with Jordan Love at quarterback, you can say 4 and take that super flex spot as a tight end. But that I don't know. It just seems like it's still overkill on the number of tight ends. I think Legion of Doom is the team that rosters the most. So certainly at least cut Hakeem Butler and get an extra running back, I think is the easiest move to make. And then again, those bigger trades, having to pick that direction though, win now, push in, really get that QB2 upgrade, or go for the younger assets and sell Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, which should still net value from teams that are looking to compete. I mean, I've got Kupp, I think, ranked as like the wide receiver 7 in Dynasty. So you got to find the manager in the league maybe that values him that way, but it probably exists.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. And I had this team ranked 11th over the next team that we're going to talk about. So I was one of the, I guess, quote unquote higher rankers. And the reason it is, and this is the distinction we make at the beginning of the show, is that this is not best team, worst team. This is team we would want to take over. If I was going to jump into this league as an orphan, take over this team, this is the team I would like to take over because of those 2 pieces you mentioned, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill. Because those are 2 pieces I'm immediately, well, I wouldn't say immediately. Those are pieces I'm trying to move. Not immediately. I'm waiting till the season starts. I'm waiting till teams start to separate themselves a little bit. Like, okay, this guy's got a couple wins under his belt. He seems to be a contender. He can use a Cooper Kupp or a Tyreek Hill. I'm going to reach out to him, sell him one of those guys, get a nice package back, maybe some picks for next year, maybe one of those quarterbacks that you mentioned. So to me, those 2 guys give me a lot of flexibility as far as what I can do with this roster. If you were to go with the win now, I guess you could sell off some pieces to get some pieces to go win now. But I'm more about selling Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp at their peak value this season, and then trying to build for next year. Shane, what are your thoughts here? I know the tight end premium thing kind of threw some things off here, but what are your thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I had them ranked 11th as well. I think they've got they've just got a ton of youth, which is always something that kind of bumps it up in my mind in Dynasty. But I agree with you and with Kyle. Like, it's probably based on the rest of the construction of your roster, it's time to sell Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp. But I'm going to shout out my fellow alumni, Dwayne McBride. I think he's a sneaky sleeper for you on this team because we don't know what Alexander Madison can do from a full season standpoint. Is he going to be Dalvin Cook or is he going to be more of a Jag, just a guy? And if he leans towards that latter half, I think that opens up the door for Ty Chandler and Dwayne McBride. So I like that you have Dwayne McBride on there as a sleeper, but from just a general standpoint, I'm probably trying to sell those 2 wide receivers and get a haul if you can.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm talking to the guys in the chat there about the tight end premium, saying that it may or may not be in the scoring. And I'll use this opportunity to implore this league. We've done a ton of these PLPs. We've done a ton of different platforms. Please, please, please go to Sleeper.
Go to Sleeper, please, for the love of God.
Yes, Sleeper makes things so much easier. You don't have to have spreadsheets like y'all do, and the scoring is very straightforward, and it keeps track of everything for you. That's just my 2 cents. CBS was great maybe a decade ago, but Sleeper is the way to go now.
Just talking again about sorry, Zach, but real quick, Jamal Williams, I think, is a good also sell high opportunity, especially if there's an announcement at all on Kamara.
Stole my thunder. Stole my thunder.
Okay. Go ahead and elaborate on it, Zach.
No, I completely agree. I think, there's a few assets I'm looking at trading right now because I think any amount of wins that you could accrue early in the year are going to hurt you. I mean, realistically, this is a team for the future, so I don't see why holding on until maybe the trade deadline. I could understand if you're a fringe team. But, with those young QBs, there's upside, but not a lot of stuff you can depend on right off the bat. And Jamal Williams is that perfect guy where whoever has Kamara, you sell him to him, get that premium, because if there is something that comes out punishment-wise, they're absolutely going to want to pay that price because we've seen Jamal get the workload in Detroit. And I think it's safe to assume the same in New Orleans if Kamara is out. With that in mind, someone like Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, absolutely. But someone we didn't touch on that I would actually look to move if I were managing this team is Bijan Robinson.
Interesting.
I know he's a rookie. Don't get me wrong. I know he's a young guy, but I don't currently look at this roster as a win now team. I look at it as a long-term build. And someone like Bijan, you'll be ready to compete soon enough, but I think the assets you could get in return would be worthwhile to be looking to move him now, selling him while he's young and while all the hype is there.
And again,
Zach,
I
that is
think
probably the smartest thing you've ever said.
Hey,
I think
finally.
And again, I think that like when you're selling those three assets, Bijan, Hill, and Cup, it's very specific deals. You're looking for very specific types of player, not just what is the overall value matched what the trade is. And again, like I think one of the things to do is, get a quarterback back in at least one, if not two of those trades. Maybe,
Yeah.
you package Jordan Love with one of those assets to get an even better quarterback. Another piece.
And there's a few assets as well that the McBrides, those type of guys, where I think there's a lot of upside where you didn't spend a lot of draft equity to get them, and I really like that for the long term position of this team, and that's the benefit of this startup just happening. Is none of even the worst roster isn't completely gutted, where it's hard to see a long term outlook. There is stuff to build off of here. It's just about picking your pieces and being patient for getting the right price in return.
All right, good stuff. Let's get to number 11. We spent plenty of time on team number 12.
Number 11.
All right, the number 11 team was ranked as high as 8 and as low as 12, and that team is DJ Raiders. And Zach, this is your squad.
This squad, wow, it's interesting. I see a lot of win now pieces for a team that doesn't look ready to win now. And I think my best example of where to start would be the tight end position. Look, I'm a Packers fan, as Kyle already stated. I'm high on the long-term outlook of potentially those two tight end sets and those young tight ends they got. But if Musgrave is in your starting lineup, you're down bad. That's all I can put to it. I mean, there's a lot of guys where they are proven vets, but there is the question of, did Josh Jacobs reach his ceiling? Is it all downhill from here? Eckler, how much longer can he produce? Deshaun Watson, will he ever show what he did in Houston, in Cleveland? There's a lot of question marks around this team that make me very nervous. And that's where I immediately am thinking about what kind of moves I can make. Someone even like Kyler Murray scares me. There's the injuries. There's a lot of ups and downs throughout his career. I think someone like Kyler, you need to be patient on. And that's where, even Geno Smith, I think a lot of these guys that you drafted are guys you should immediately be trying to trade to someone that feels as if they can really compete now. I don't know. The running backs, I like a few of the big names, but it's tough to really say there's depth because, well, Jacobs, Eckler, and then, Pacheco, Fournette. I mean, old running back room. You never really want that, even when you're in a win now, but especially when you're at the bottom. It's a scary climb. I mean, I'm trying to just dance over Christian Watson here because, well, I can praise about him all day. I love that asset. Everyone on the Going for Two team knows that. But, man, I just don't understand some of the picks. The J.K. Dobbins, the Amari Cooper, the Christian Kirk. There is upside, but with this roster as a whole, there's too many question marks where I would really feel comfortable taking over this team. Obviously, we've all seen worse, but it's not looking great. I mean, as many of these guys as I want to say I like, I just view them as assets that I need to get rid of as soon as possible. I don't see a lot of long-term hold on to them. I mean, Christian Watson, Kyler, Deshaun, I think those are guys I'm on wait on. I think everyone else is before the season starts, I want to get them off my team, sell them at a high rate now. What are your guys' thoughts there?
Yeah, I agree with you on the question mark. This is a team question mark right here because you got Deshaun Watson. Is he going to return to form? You got Kyler Murray. Is he even going to play this season? Christian Kirk. Is he going to be sort of overshadowed by Calvin Ridley, or will he still be the alpha there? J.K. Dobbins. He looked good at the end of last year, but can he stay healthy? Amari Cooper's a little bit older. there are some pieces here that I like that you can definitely move and get some. Again, like the last team we had. I mean, the 2 running backs, Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler. You get into the season and you got a guy who's contending, and you're not one of the contenders. They're the perfect pieces to move to those guys to get your some picks for next year, or a tier down at running back and pick up an extra receiver, an extra young receiver, something like that. And it's the reason why I had this team ranked at number 12 over the other team, is because I didn't see as many great pieces to move where you have as much options as the last team did. I think this team honestly could potentially be better as far as record goes as it's built right now than the last team. But I think as far as moves to be made, I think the last team had more options.
And I think something that needs to be emphasized with this roster as well is the amount of quarterbacks. I understand it's a super flex league, but at some point you need to draw a line in the sand and say, hey, I probably don't need any more shots, just throwing shit at the wall in regards to quarterbacks. I mean, I look at Dugan, Zach Wilson, Matt Corral, Tanner McKee. There's so many of these guys where, yeah, I can understand fringe roster spots, but this dude has 6 quarterbacks on his bench, and at some point, hey, we just got to move on.
Yeah, I think I'd probably easily take out 4 of them. Corral and the 3 rookies. Jordan Smith certainly understand. I can stomach hanging on to Zach Wilson. I think Matt Corral just seems like he's buried in Carolina behind Bryce Young with 3 years left on a rookie contract. They probably have no incentive not to keep him as a practice squad guy. I think just like Hakeem Butler on the previous team, like if you're going to cut one player, I think it's easily Matt Corral.
I'd like you to refer to Zach Wilson as the Mormon Mahomes, please. But yes, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think he deserves to be in the same sentence as Mahomes in any way possible.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Unless he's cleaning Mahomes' shoes.
See, I feel like he would mess up and injure Mahomes accidentally. I don't even want him to do that.
All right. Let's get to team number 10.
Number 10.
Team number 10 ranked as high as number 8, as low as number 11. And it is The Walking Dead. And Shane, you've been chomping at the bit here to break some teams down. So go ahead and break this one down.
You know it. First off, I love your team name. That's one of my favorite TV shows. So I'm proud of you there. And I was the one that ranked you highest at 8. And the reason for that is I'm a Tua believer. I think if he stays healthy, this may be a hot take, but he's a top 12 option for me. You've got a hell of a trio in Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, and Treylon Burks. I believe in Treylon. You just got to give him a little bit of time. Then you've got a nice Pickett and Pickens stack, even though I don't believe in Pickett. And I did notice, too, you have Allen Robinson way deep down there on the bench. It ain't worth it. Get rid of Allen Robinson. Find someone who will pay a 4th for him. My biggest concern with you, and Kyle will probably agree with me, and that's probably why he ranked them where they did, you need running back help. Javante's health worries me, at least for the beginning of the year. Dalvin Cook and Kareem Hunt are not on a team right now, and Damian Harris is in a timeshare that we don't know what's going to happen there. Is it going to be James Cook? Is it going to be Harris? Is it going to be a split? What's Nyheim Hines do? Like, you desperately need running back help. And then depth, I know, is harder to come by in a 12-team league, but that is another huge concern that I have for your team, is just the general depth. You've got some options that may have some upside, but nothing that really excites me that you can probably replace in your current starting lineup unless things go absolutely right for you.
I think there's just too many wide receivers on roster, like you were saying. Allen Robinson, Tyquan Thornton, Ben Skoranek. I might be willing to cut all 3 of those players.
You could honestly cut Skoranek.
What do we think of Dontravian Wicks? Is it too early? Like, because he's a rookie, you just hold on and see?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, Wicks, I agree, hold on and see. But someone like Tua, more specifically, if you see that upside, sell him to whoever sees that top 12 QB upside right now. Just because I think there's enough variables there where it's tough to really feel confident. Kyle, we see you, The Walking Dead.
Yeah, but a bigger fan of the comic series than the TV show, to be honest. But yeah.
But no, I like this wide receiver core. I think there's something to build around there. Absolutely. Same goes for Javonte. And that's where someone like Tua, I think, now with all these question marks, forget the production last year, you can sell them to someone that feels like they can really make that push, and Tua will help them. And that's where I think you can really make that, probably in draft assets, you can make back that profit that you need to really get the running back room where you want it.
Yeah, and I'll agree with y'all on the bench there. I think a lot of times what I want to have on my bench are guys that can gain value. Maybe not necessarily become studs, but guys that I got them cheap and then they can then gain value and I can sell them for more than I bought them for. I don't see a lot of that on the bench. I think Michael
No,
Wilson's probably one of them that you could probably gain value through the season, but the rest of them are probably going to lose value at this point in their careers.
I
Uh,
would say Wilson, Wicks, and Tyquan Thornton are probably the people with the most upside. I just realized you've got Juju Smith Schuster. Um, I would hold on to him for now, but then once he kind of if he has a blow up game in the first 4 weeks, I'm selling him.
Selling immediately.
If I'm in your situation.
Yeah, I think Juju is going to be better than people expect. I don't expect he's going to be great by any means, but I think the hate is going too far.
Yeah,
Because we saw Jacoby Myers last year on offense be pretty good in PPR, and Juju's at least as good as Jacoby Myers, if not better. So
definitely.
agreed. All right, let's move to team number 9.
Number 9.
Team number 9 ranked as high as number 7, as low as number 9. And it is very an unimaginative name here. It is just Team 7. So
Now, the two people who ranked them 7, did they just rank them 7 because he's Team 7? Because I was almost tempted to do that, and he ended up
Duh.
pretty close. In hindsight, knowing the 2 tight end premium, I probably would have ranked the DJ Raiders. I had them all the way up at 8. I probably would have ranked them a little lower.
fair. Jerry, we haven't heard from you in a while. This is your squall here. Give us your breakdown.
I'm going to jump right into the tight ends because now that we know that it's 2 tight end premium, he's off to a really good start with Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Greg Dulcich, Luke Schoonmaker, and Isaiah Likely if Andrews goes down. That's a nice
That's a hell of a
way of tight
room
ends.
right
Yeah,
there.
that's a tight end room right there. You can definitely move 1 or 2 of them and get a premium for them. But for the most part, I mean, you're going to be starting 2 of these every week, maybe Pitts and Andrews or Andrews and Dulcich, whatever way you want to go. One thing I noticed with like the first 3 teams that we talked about is like they are all really top heavy. They're going to put out competitive teams on a weekly basis. But if they ever need to pivot to somebody on their bench, they don't really have a lot of that. This is where we start getting into some deeper teams where you have some bodies to throw out there, have some more trade bait. I like the quarterback room. I mean, you can't really go wrong with a Patrick Mahomes being in your quarterback room, and then for your super flex, having a Derek Carr, a Brissett who could see some time, Heineke who could possibly see some time after Britter. But like Mahomes and Carr are going to be the top 2 for the year. I would try to look into maybe bringing in a third guy. It seems like, I don't know, 55 different quarterbacks are rostered in this league, so definitely going to have to look around and see who has a plethora of them and maybe bring in one more guy, use one of those tight ends as some trade bait, try to bring in another quarterback. But for the most part, Mahomes and Carr are going to be the top 2 guys on a weekly basis. And then if Carr goes down, you got Winston there. So that's definitely helps there. The running backs they're mid, but I mean, you got some decent bodies there. Ramondre should be a RB1 this year. Jamie's boy Roshan Johnson is there. He should hopefully take over as the season goes on. Rashad Penny is a solid back, and I mean he's got an injury history, but so does the guy that's right in front of him, DeAndre Swift. P. Ryan, we could see a little bit of him at the beginning of the year, depending on what Javonte does. But P. Ryan, he showed even in Cincinnati that he deserves to be on the field. He should be on the field in 3rd down situations. So at least that's another like maybe big bye week flex guy to put in there if you needed to throw a running back in there. Malik Davis, I really like. As of right now, Dallas really hasn't done anything behind Tony Pollard. There's still the chance they bring back Zeke. They could bring in a Leonard Fournette. But until something like that happens, I mean, we could get a little bit of volume out of Malik Davis too. We haven't really seen Tony Pollard carry the workload as much as people are wanting him to carry. And then getting into the wide receivers, it's a good room. It's a little shallow though. He's got 6 wide receivers I'm seeing. Definitely some good bodies that you're going to be putting out there on a weekly basis. Moore, Godwin, Dotson probably going to be the main 3. So I don't want to call it a strong room, but it's definitely a trio of wide receiver 2s. There's Zay Flowers as well. And then the duo of Terrace Marshall and Jonathan Mingo for Carolina. Hopefully one of them pops off with Bryce Young. But overall, like I said, you got some pieces here that you can move, maybe bring in another quarterback. But the tight ends are definitely going to be the room that I dangle over the league mates' heads and try to see if you could bring in some extra bodies there and make this team a little bit stronger.
I agree 100%.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who's going to talk there?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at the quarterback room, the way it's constructed, like having a lot of shots at different quarterback situations, like maybe Heineke starts, maybe Brissett starts. If Carver gets hurt, you got the handcuff with Winston, so that'll make sense. Seems like Teddy Bridgewater's unnecessary, though. So that could be, like, to Jerry's point, not enough receiver depth. Maybe, take out Bridgewater and add a receiver off of waivers, and that's an extra body potentially for in season.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is in exact contrast to the last team we talked about, this guy's got a bench full of guys that can gain value throughout the season. He mentioned Malik Davis, Keontae Ingram. If James Conner was to go down, Jerome Ford has been sort of a Twitter darling for the off season. Schoonmaker is a Dallas tight end that if he wins the job there, obviously his value goes up. So he's got a bunch of guys that could definitely see. Now they could obviously bottom out and not do anything, but you probably didn't pay much for any of those guys either. So their value could definitely increase, and that's kind of how I like to build my bench. Is I want to have guys that could potentially increase their value. Shane, you got something you want to say here? You got that face that looks like you want to say.
I don't understand the. Sorry, I don't understand the Jerome Ford love. Like, he's nowhere close to the talent level of Kareem Hunt, in my opinion. The only reason he's touching the field is if Nick Chubb gets tired and is like, yo, I need a breather. Like, well, I don't get it.
The reason that I like him is because Nick Chubb has been there for how long, and how many receptions does he have over his career? Not very many.
I would disagree with that.
He's not
he got close to 40 1 year, I believe.
Yeah. I just see Jerome Ford. They've always had a two-headed committee. So who else are you going to put there besides Jerome Ford that they have in their backfield? They've always had two. As great as Chubb has been, they've always had a second guy there. So Jerome Ford could be that second guy. Now, will he end up panning out and being anywhere near Kareem Hunt? Probably not. But I think for what you're paying for him, the cheap value you're getting there, I think the reward is definitely worth the risk.
He had 36 receptions. That's Chubb, that is, in 2019.
And that was pre-Kareem Hunt, right?
And that's what I'm thinking is.
No, Kareem Hunt was there. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, he was there. You're right.
With the running backs being discussed, though, I wanted to touch on P. Ryan. I really see an opportunity for him to get a workload even if Javonte is healthy. I mean, obviously it was a different coaching system, different overall scheme last year with Hackett compared to what's now with Peyton. But we've seen them utilize running backs even when Javonte is fully healthy. I mean, Melvin was just robbing him last year. It was criminal at times when they were both healthy. And, I'm watching Melvin just get this massive workload. What's to say that P. Ryan can't prove that he deserves that this year? And I think that's probably the asset that I'm going to hold on to and see if someone wants to really pay for him. Relative. But
Zach, you and I are on the same wavelength today, man, and I absolutely love it. I love P. Ryan for the first half of the season. And Javonte works best in a committee. We've seen it in college. We've seen it in the pros. He works best. He's the most efficient when he's in a committee.
Yeah, and I was going to piggyback on what Zach said as well with the coaching staff. Sean Payton has always been the committee guy, right? I mean, going back to even, I'm going to date myself here, but Pierre Thomas, going back to that, Sproles and guys like that, he always had the running back by committee. And
that's Super Bowl winning trio: Reggie Bush, Sproles, Pierre Thomas.
Absolutely. So going back to even before the committee was a big thing in the NFL, he was already doing the committee. So I can definitely see P. Ryan having value, even if Javonte Williams is fully healthy. So I love that. All right, let's move on to team number 7.
Number 7.
Number 17.
Oh, we're at 8, actually.
We got number 8. Oh, you're right. Let me hit the drop for number 8 and give him his love.
Number 8.
Sorry, number 8. You're not number 7. The number 8 team was ranked as high as 6 and as low as 9. And the team is the Land of Boz. And Kyle, this is your squad here.
Yeah, I guess I was one of the highest on it as well. And I think I do love Justin Fields, and I think to answer another question that we had in the chat, I don't think it's from one of the league mates, or potentially it is, but pertaining to a different league. But when talking about like a dynasty startup, where would you ideally want to be in a 12-team league? And they mentioned Superflex, and I kind of like the 8th spot because it guarantees a top 8 quarterback. And to me, Justin Fields is like the tier breaker there as that QB 8, at least in my rankings. And yeah, I think it's not much depth behind. I guess Garoppolo's there, but so you've got your 3 quarterbacks, but 2 young ones, especially Fields and Bryce Young. So gives the sense of, okay, this team could, in theory, contend now, but if they don't win at all this year, they've got most of their team is still really young. So, very flexible in terms of what direction to choose. So kind of like the team for that reason is there are lots of options. The one player, if I was taking over this team, the one player I would try and sell is Calvin Ridley. I'm not as convinced that he's going to come out and immediately be the Jags' #1 wide receiver. And based on where his value seems to be right now, there's probably enough managers in this league that can believe that right now. So he might be a good sellable asset before the season starts, either looking to acquire extra draft capital or another younger piece. It could be just looking at the breakdown of this team. There's enough depth at probably most positions where you can be flexible with what the return is. Maybe Calvin Ridley nets a tight end upgrade. That would be, I think, the one thing that keeping this team from competing year one is, and especially in the 2 tight end format, is not having a true top 12 or really even top 10 tight end that can be that difference maker. Gerald Everett, and hoping on the rookie Sam Laporta, or hoping Austin Hooper holds out the other rookie in Vegas. Maybe selling Calvin Ridley for an upgrade at tight end 1 really impacts the starting lineup the best. And that, especially if they're a youngerish tight end or middle, prime years tight end, that's not just a 1-year rental piece you're getting. You're truly extending that window, potentially helping your year 1, but also helping you in future years. So I guess the other thing would maybe be a running back upgrade. I love Ken Walker and Damian Pierce, but there's especially in while the tight end premium is important, still PPR league, you maybe want more pass catching potential from your running back core. And maybe there's an RB1 upgrade or an RB2 upgrade there somewhere. Devon Achane as a rookie might be that guy, but I think there's options. I think there might be better options via trade that can help this team's lineup, but also help it long term. I think selling Calvin Ridley to me works in both directions still. So again, keeping flexible, which is why I think I rank this team so high relative to the rest of everyone, in terms of just having the flexibility, having lots of options, something I would like to have on my team. And maybe it's my love for Justin Fields too.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I had him ranked as the same as you, as number 6, and there is a lot of options on this team, and it is pretty young. And ironically, me and you both agree that Calvin Ridley should be the one that they should try to move. I think the dynasty world is split on Calvin Ridley. You're either on the boat that he's going to struggle this year, being a new team, not having played for 2 years, a new quarterback. Christian Kirk is there, who had chemistry with T-Law. That's the side I'm on. But then you have guys that are like, the talent will overcome, and he's more talented than Christian Kirk, and he will come in and and own that #1 receiver spot. If you can find a guy, if you're not that guy, let's put it that way. If you're not the guy that thinks Calvin Ridley is going to be the return to form kind of guy, then he's the one I'm trying to find that guy in my league, and I'm trying to move him, because I don't believe, at least not year 1, maybe second half of the year he starts to pick it up, or even next year, but I just don't see. And Calvin Ridley's not a young guy. I mean, we think of him as young because he came into the league, not that long ago, but he came in the league pretty old. I don't know how his age pulled up here, but I know he was a very old rookie when he came into the league, and it's something that has been mentioned a few times, that he's getting up there for a guy that in our heads we think is a lot younger than he actually is.
Because isn't this his 5th-year option year?
He's 28. Thanks, Jeff.
That's 28. It's 2 years from being the 30, which is the mark for receivers. We think of him being younger.
But he had a year off as well. It wasn't another
really
year of
he's
wear
had
and tear.
a year and a half off.
Yeah. See, but I wanted to touch on one thing with the trade assets here. I don't look at Calvin Ridley, Debo. I like this wide receiver room, but I think it's a risky business when you're depending on young quarterbacks to help you win now. And that's where I see more question marks about this running back room specifically. There's a lot of guys on teams where we've seen a running back by committee approach. Miami, Seattle. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons to love Ken Walker, don't get me wrong. But there's also a lot of reasons to be nervous about these running backs. Someone like Khalil Herbert could easily lose the job to Roshan before week 1 even begins. And I guess that's where, if I'm trying to build long-term with a roster like this, I'm going to plan around, some of those bench guys, maybe someone like Alec Pierce, maybe, increasing in value over time. But I'm going to try and sell the hype of the running backs now, get those assets in return, and just hope that the rest of my young guys pan out in the future.
Is there any thought to leaning in on these committees? Because they've, Land of Boz has decided to make it the land of the Dolphins, A-Chain and Mostert. They've got Dante Foreman behind Khalil Herbert. Do you try and go trade for Roshan Johnson, just complete the Bears running back room? Or
to me, it was more about Kenneth Walker, and just because he's the biggest asset, biggest name, and the biggest return I can get via trade, and that's where obviously he seems like the clear workhorse there. But that's also where I can really sell him as that now, and then who knows? So I
actually like your idea of selling Herbert, though. I think that does make sense, because especially when you have Fields, is the quarterback running back stack really that great? Especially because Herbert really doesn't have a great receiving profile. That's why I'd almost think, like, if you want to stack any running back with Fields, it's probably Roshan. But the simpler thing to do might just be and try and trade out of both. If Dante Foreman starts the season as the starter week 1 or gets a big workload, he's an easy flip. And if Khalil Herbert is viewed in that way right now, that's an easy flip at this time of year.
And to me, I think that's where this team was the cutoff from them and then the bottom group, because there's enough assets on the starting lineup and in the bench where you can make plenty of moves. You can kind of pick and choose as you please. And so I think that's where it seems like we're all on the same page, where we feel fairly comfortable with taking over a roster like this.
The foundational pieces of Bryce Young, Justin Fields, Chris Olave, you're not really touching those, but everything else aside from that, anything's open to trade.
Agreed. All right, now we can get to number 7.
Number 7.
This one probably has the largest disparity in the rankings. This one was ranked as high as number 4 and as low as number 10. And Zach, I think you're on the lower side here. You had him ranked at number 9. This is your team. Give me your thoughts here.
Yeah, I had a hard time seeing the number 4 from Kyle. Kyle, I love you, but this is a team that puckers me up a little bit, because there's a lot.
Because they have 97 running backs. That's why.
Yes,
Kyle loves his running backs.
Hey, and I can't blame him.
I think Trevor Lawrence at quarterback is that's
a good guess.
I love T-Law. That is why I like this roster. There's a lot of proven guys at the wide receiver position. I'm really high on Garrett Wilson. I think that Rodgers can have an MVP year because, hey, he's actually putting in work and showing up to camps. It turns out, a team and a quarterback can probably succeed more when they're showing up and working with the team. So someone like Garrett Wilson, I'm very high on this year. I think it's a dangerous game, though, because you have so many older guys. Aaron Jones, I think he can be great this year. Derrick Henry, same thing. But we don't know the expiration date on those running backs. They're both older. They're both very much so win-now assets in fantasy. And obviously you have the upside of Gibbs and Pollard, and that's more of the long-term look. But I also want to emphasize, isn't Pollard 25, 26?
He's up there, too. He's been in the league for a while.
He's on a second contract, right? Like it's not even so much about age, but experience of the NFL. He's on his second contract now. So, and yes, we're talking about the Bull.
Yes,
26,
of course. Yeah, and that's where, to me, it's not like he's 24, just really kind of getting that experience of the NFL level. Like, we've seen him produce, but he's also only a year or two really left. For the most part, 26 to 30. 30 is ancient for running backs, and that's what makes me nervous. And especially with, I know we talked about it with the 8th ranked team. Just wanted to clarify again, this is the 7th ranked one. But Gibbs, I like him long term, but I am very nervous about them signing Montgomery. I do think it's going to be a committee approach. We've seen them use multiple backs. We've seen multiple backs be productive in that offense, but they have a lot of weapons there. Who knows when Gibbs will really take that next step? And more importantly, on top of that, you have Stafford at quarterback as your third one, and then you have Brock Purdy. And that's where, as much as I love T-Law, that's why I was low on this team. Putting Brock Purdy in that super flex, I would almost rather put some of his running backs or some of his wide receivers on his bench in that slot because, depending on the week, Brock Purdy could easily be a 10, 15 point QB producer, regardless of format. I wanted to.
Stafford's healthy. And I think, especially early in the season, you probably want to run Stafford more. And if you see that Brock Purdy's healthy towards the end of the season, that might be when Stafford gets hurt, the elbow inflammation pops up again, maybe back injuries. So I think to start the season, you probably actually want Stafford.
I agree, but it's just the overall roster construction where I see a lot of early production from some guys when other guys are still finding their role, trying to prove and earn those reps. And then there's other guys that are, hey, we're producing now, but who knows if we'll be healthy come end of the year. And that's where, to me, this roster is almost more of in a purgatory spot. That's why I had it 9th, because it's not really committed enough one way or the other. So I either need to make those moves now. Whether I'm going young or I'm going win now, I just need to commit to one and start making moves for it ASAP.
Yeah, I'm agree with you on the running backs as well with Tony Pollard and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jahmyr Gibbs scares me a little bit. And I know we really can't, look at the helmet and just make our analysis. But if you look at the Lions' history of running backs, I mean, we got Kerryon Johnson, we got DeAndre Swift, we got Javid Best, Joique Bell, all these guys that were, at one point we're like, ooh, this guy's going to be so good in this Lions offense. And then, it's like Barry Sanders has cursed them all because they can never be good in that offense. And that's what's
the second Reggie Bush call out. He was in that Lions room too.
Yep, absolutely.
I like some of the flyers on this team though. The Sky Moore, Nico Collins, Parker Washington. There's some guys there with upside that you probably didn't pay a lot to get. I like those pieces, but that's where you just got to commit. Which way are you trying to go? How patient can you be? Are you down for more of a long-term contender, or would you prefer to be in the hunt this year?
Yep, good call.
The one thing I'll say, and this will help make Jeff look good, is that the confusion between 8 and 7 almost makes sense because in our consensus rankings, they both ranked at 7.4. I think Jeff it's my fault too, because Jeff put the Bull higher because I had them at 4 and no one had Land of Boz that high. So
yeah, that's how I do my.
You can blame me, Jeff.
Yeah, they were both came up at 7.4, but because the Bull was what had the higher individual rank at 4, he was the tiebreaker. So they basically finished at the same spot, 7 and 8. So
we'll give them 7.5 each as we basically get to the halfway point of the show.
All right.
And I'll shut up real quick, Jeff, before we jump to sorry, I just wanted to say, I know Bo just mentioned Gibbs is awesome, and we haven't seen a historic running back like this in Detroit in a while, but there's enough.
I thought Swift is more talented than Gibbs personally, so I'll disagree.
I like Gibbs, but to me, I just don't see him as really making up that difference for a weak super flex spot. And that's where some of my concern is.
All this hate for Brock Purdy, man, I tell you. It's like there's not a 49er fan on this panel or not. All right, let's get to number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6 team. Another big disparity here. High is 2 and ranked as low is 10. And this is big timers. And the one that had him at 2 is Shane. And Shane complains on every PLP that we do that I give him all of his lowest teams. This is the second time tonight that I've given him his highest ranked team. So
it's funny, Jeff. I looked at the sheet and you actually gave me all of my highest teams for once. So my complaining worked. You listened.
See, I thought you complained after he assigned the teams, though.
No, I just joke. I made a joke in our group chat. But before I jump into big timers, I do want to comment on Swift. When Swift played in Detroit, he was phenomenal. The health was the biggest issue with him. All right, big timers. Time for you. So I really leaned into the team that you want to take over the most aspect with you guys. I believe CJ Stroud is going to be good. Bryce Young's my QB1. CJ Stroud, I'm pretty sure, was my QB2 for the rookie class. I believe in both of them as passers more than I do Richardson, and I think that will give them longevity in the league more so than Richardson. Richardson's upside is huge, but I'm going Young and Stroud over him for right now. And I believe in Desmond Ritter. I've been in the Desmond Ritter fan club for about 3 years since he's been at Cincinnati. Me and Joel Verzoso have been championing him for a while. I think Ritter's got all the tools and he's a winner. He won a ton at Cincinnati, and now I know it was against maybe lesser competition in college football, but I believe in him. I think he's going to be a good enough passer and he's got weapons now. He's got Bijan, he's got Drake London, and he's got Kyle Pitts. So I feel really, really good about Ritter going forward. Then you've got Breece Hall, who I'm not a fan of personally, but he's a top dynasty back. And then you've got Najee, and that is someone that I believe in. And despite his lack of efficiency, I think this year he's got a chance to improve on that and continue to be better. And plus, Pittsburgh loves to run the ball. And so Najee's going to be a guy that's going to get you volume at the running back position, and it's pretty guaranteed. This is the literal notes that I put in my notes. Holy shit, Batman. You have Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, and Drake London. I don't think you can find many trios better, especially from a dynasty perspective. I actually have Justin Jefferson and T. Higgins on my home league dynasty team and love that pairing. And Drake London has been a buy for me all offseason because I do think he's got a ton of upside. And then I love that you also have the rookie tight end 1 and tight end 2. And just for the distinction, Myers tight end 1, Kincaid is tight end 2 on your roster. And especially with it being tight end premium, I think you got a nice future ahead of you for that position. You've got Charbonnet as a flex, which I think is perfect. And then you've got a ton of youth on your bench, especially at wide receiver. And I think the point that really stuck with me when I was looking at this team again is those wide receivers are on teams that have question marks for the receiving options. You've got Houston, with John Mechie. I think you had Wandale and potentially Jalen Hyatt, if I'm remembering. I'm not looking directly at it. Kyle, shut your mouth.
I'm on Shoemaker. What can I say?
I really, really believe that you've got some options that can gain a ton of value, and they were probably pretty cheap for you. The concern is QB. If it doesn't go like I think it will, you could be in a lot of trouble. But I would love to take this team over. They were my second team.
Yeah, this team was a team I liked as well. I didn't have them quite as high as you. Obviously, you had them at the highest. But I like the pieces on the bench. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of guys that have some good upside there. I like Khalil Shakir. I actually got him on my Scott Fishbowl team. Marvin Mims, obviously a rookie. Kendrick Miller, rookie. He's got some upside. He backed up Breece Hall with Izzy Abanikanda, so that's a good pick there. Yep. Trey Sermon probably doesn't need to be on the roster. I think you need to cut him. Yeah, he's probably not rosterable at this point. But
the running back depth guy is saying, yeah, probably cut Trey Sermon. There's probably a better running back out there that can be rostered instead.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could probably sign Kerryon Johnson, and he'd probably be better than Trey Sermon.
Good point. Anybody else want to chime in?
As much chance to play snaps, probably.
Anybody else want to chime in here before we get to team number 5?
I love a lot of the youth here. I think you're in the right spot. Someone that I really like on this bench is Abanikanda. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Abanikanda.
I like him a lot. I think that's
Abanikanda.
Yeah, I think that's a good piece to have, especially when you're the team that has Breece Hall. I think there was enough kind of foresight with some of these picks. Someone like Marvin Mims as well, where he could really work his way into getting some volume. And even someone like John Mechie, there used to be a lot of excitement about him, and now he just kind of disappeared, and there's a lot of upside there. So, and Wandale Robinson. I mean, hey, ups and downs all around, but there's enough stuff that you can build off long term. I don't need to get on the Ritter tangent because, well, Shane, we disagree on this one.
Well, we apparently disagree on Michael Mayer too, so you've broken up with me essentially tonight, Zach.
I think in hindsight of, again, the 2 PPR tight end ranking, I think I might raise this team instead of 10, maybe 9 or 8 simply. And I don't necessarily love building so much around rookie tight ends, especially with a bunch of young tight ends, but I think their trade value will be so elevated. In some rankings, you see Kincaid valued as a top 6 tight end.
Yeah.
So I might almost want him just to be able to sell him. Go get an older tight end, or even just, again, I don't believe in Ritter, so I would want to, can I address my QB2 by trading away Kincaid? And this, because of the league scoring settings, it might be possible. So I do like
why I had them
Zach
at
mentioned
6,
long term. This whole
Sorry, go
team
ahead.
is super young. There's no like old need to sell asset right now. So you've got tons of flexibility.
And that's why I had them at 6. Is just because they had a direction, they committed to it, and I love how much youth there is, and I love how many pieces that they didn't spend a lot to get in the draft that they can sell higher on potentially down the road. Obviously, only time will tell. So be patient with this team. Really don't commit to making moves too aggressively because these assets can really climb if you just give it time. So be patient with this squad, and I think you can be in a good spot long term.
There's so much wrong with me, Shane, and you're gonna hate this too. If this team is so committed to like long-term rebuild and not necessarily having to win this year, would you just sell Desmond Ritter, thinking he might
Yes.
not have a long-term future? You don't worry so much about having to put that second QB in the super flex because you're not as worried about points, and thus, like if you can get just draft pick backs and not have to demand a quarterback back, you might actually get somewhat of a haul for a third round NFL
Kyle,
quarterback.
I'm actually okay with that, with the stipulation that you're leaning more towards the long term. Like if
You're
Ritter
trying to
has a
add
good-
Caleb Williams or Drake May to this team. and
Exactly.
get
If
rid
you-
of that second quarterback to make it more easy.
Yeah, if Ritter has a great game in week 1, couple good games in week 1 and 2, like sell him. You probably, I don't remember what his ADP was actually for rookie drafts, but if you can get a second or a first for Ritter after having a couple of good games, then I would absolutely do that.
I feel like he was a mid to late second a lot of super drafts, if I remember.
I was thinking second or third.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw him in the third very often. I think a lot of people, because if he came out in this year's class, he'd probably be a third round pick.
Yeah.
But because last year's class only had the one first rounder, all the mid guys were raised up into the second. So last year was just kind of strange.
Agreed. All right, let's get to team number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5 team ranked as high as number 4, as low as number 7, and it is He Hate Me. And Jerry, hopefully your internet's working, and if this is your team, go ahead and break it down.
All right. So this team, it's got a lot of balance to it. It's definitely a team that, I mean, it could definitely use some upgrades, definitely use some trading away of some players or dropping some players, but it's like right on the cusp of, do I want to go all in or do I want to just build for the future? Because I think it can be, and most likely will be, a playoff team in 2023. But of course, this is a dynasty, so you want to have a competitive team for a few years. Starting at the top, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, a nice 1-2 punch. Again, just like the last team that I had. It's a little not weak, but it's shallow in the quarterback department. Maybe Kyle Trask gets you some spot starts. Maybe Clayton Tune gets you some spot starts. But Trask, we're probably looking towards mid to end of season, Tune towards beginning of the season. In a perfect world, with Jalen Hurts and Aaron Rodgers, you don't really want to have to start Tune because you want to start those two, and hopefully Kyler's back by then. But then hopefully maybe Kyle Trask ends up being your third quarterback as the season goes on, if things don't work out with Baker Mayfield. And then Tyler Huntley, he's definitely a good guy to have, whether you have Lamar Jackson or you don't. Just to have on your bench. You got another contract there in Baltimore, so, or at least he's playing under a tag right now. That he's a nice body in case you have to use him later on if Lamar doesn't make it through the full season. In the running back room, strong running back core with Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Rashad White, and Alexander Madison. My love for Chase Brown has kind of dwindled down a little bit because of the Mixon news. It looks like he is going to be there at least for this year, maybe in the future. And he is a 5th-round pick, so it's not that like he's got some high draft capital, but maybe we get a little bit of something out of him. But between those 4, Taylor, Chubb, White, Madison, it's a good core for now. It's a good core for the next couple of years. I think Chubb's got a lot left in the tank. Taylor, hopefully he gets acclimated with Anthony Richardson, and they form a nice 1-2 punch there in Indianapolis. White, he's just going to get a lot of volume out there in Tampa Bay. And Madison, he gets his first crack at being a full-time starter. So on any week, you could play 2 of those guys and kind of feel comfortable with how you're looking in for your running backs, and then throw a third in the flex if you need to. But hopefully you don't need to, because you got a buttload of wide receivers here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, Mike Williams, Kadarius Toney, all solid guys that you could plug in there almost on a weekly basis. I mean, Mike Williams, obviously he's made out of paper, and Kadarius Toney, we don't know what if he's nobody's Patrick Mahomes 1, that's Travis Kelce, but is he the 2, is he the 3? Of course, being attached to Patrick Mahomes, it's always a nice thing to have. I'm really high on Tony, I'm also really high on Sky Moore. It's just hard to figure out which one I like more. But having Tony, definitely like that. Isaiah Hodgins showed a lot of promise there with Daniel Jones last year. He's another guy that you could plug into the lineup. Elijah Moore as well with Cleveland now. Hopefully he helps Deshaun Watson get back to those QB5 days that he had. So just overall, like it's a nice, strong room. You can't go wrong with. I mean, you could look at maybe selling off Devontae Adams. I don't know how you guys feel about him or not. He's going into the season with Jimmy. Doesn't seem like he's very happy there after they got rid of Carr. He's still got some left in the tank, maybe some to more of a contender. I'll get your guys' thoughts on that after. But the tight ends too, Darren Waller, Juwan Johnson, and then Zach Ertz. I'm leaning more towards Trey McBride, so Zach Ertz is kind of just a filler there. But Juwan Johnson, Darren Waller should be able to hold it down as the season goes on, and maybe looking to getting a younger one for the future to throw back there for you.
Yeah, no, great breakdown. And the only thing I got to add to it is you got a couple of roster cloggers on here that I would probably look to just drop outright. Keyshawn Vaughn, his time is coming past. He's going to be nothing. And Diami Brown is also another one that I'd probably drop and add some higher upside, running backs off the waiver wire. You're shaking your head, Shane. You like Diami Brown?
Do not cut Diami Brown until at least week 1 or 2 because he and Sam Howell played together at UNC.
Yeah,
I want to see what that connection looks like in the NFL before I'm cutting Brown.
I think I would cut Calvin Austin before I'd cut Diami Brown.
Absolutely.
But to Jeff's point, I might just cut both for running backs.
Yeah, if there's running backs out there, grab them. There's some cheap ones out there. I prefer them. And I live in Washington, D.C., and I don't think Diami Brown sees the light of day. But to your point, he has a connection with Sam Howell. Maybe he gets in there and does something. Zach, real quick, you got something?
Yeah, I love this team. This is a team that I actually view as a win now. I love it that they have enough upside plays, but I think they have 2 top 5 QBs this year. I think Rodgers will finish at QB5 this year. I think it's only this year, but Aaron has won MVPs when he's not putting in effort or caring about his team. So I'm just going to be exponentially higher when he's actually putting in that effort and he's got weapons in place. So with that in mind, I think there's enough pieces here where you can win now, you can be aggressive, but I still think you need to be mindful of playing for the future. You have that upside. Just don't commit fully to win now because that's where it'll get dangerous and it's a slippery slope because you never know what happens once you get to the playoffs. But I look at this roster and I see a clear playoff team.
Like you would say, Zach, like don't push all the chips in and sell your picks.
Yes.
But to Jerry's question on do you sell Adams or not,
no.
Unlike the team that has Kupp and Hill, who I think I want to sell those 2 pieces before the season starts because that team might be competing to, score as little points as possible. You don't even want them on your roster week 1. Whereas this team, you might want to see, can I, if Devontae Adams dies on your roster, but you win championships as a result of it, it's worth it, right? So if optimistic like Zach's ranking of a number 4, if this team is in the playoffs late, Adams might be a good piece that could still hold enough value that you may be able to salvage something and sell him in the offseason if you need him. You could still run him out for a championship. But if you're losing lots early in the season, that's when you maybe flip to trade him. But I would be patient on selling Adams.
The only thing I wanted to I agree completely. Just to finish that off, if things go underwhelming to start the year, you have plenty of guys that you can sell at the trade deadline for a high, and you can plan ahead. You can start moving on to next year. So that's where I would feel very confident and feel good that I can go any direction I want, but I can wait until the trade deadline to decide.
And all to say, I don't again, no one unanimously ranked a team 12th. It felt like fairly good balance, and it is a newer league, but no one seemed to have completely nuked this and wrecked everything so far. I mean, even the teams that maybe we don't love the roster, every team has their own future picks for next year. So you've got the tangible assets you can sell to build the roster how you want. So
I agree 100% because I was looking
good job no one messing up globally yet.
Yeah, I was looking at Team 12, going back to Team 12, and they got Bijan and they got some good pieces that you don't typically see in these PLPs, that leagues that have been around for a while. That Team 12 is usually quite terrible. because they're in a full-on rebuild and just selling everything off. So I agree. It's a very balanced league. All right, let's get to team number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4 team, and I think if you'll agree with me or not, this is where we get to the elite teams. I think these next 4 teams are like the ones that I think are the separate from everywhere else. It was teams before that. These top 4 teams I think are the ones that will be contenders. And this team is ranked as high as number 2, as low as number 5, and it is the Cones of Dunshire. And Kyle, this is your team.
Yeah, so I ranked them at number 3 actually, and if we knew the 2 tight end premium, considering the roster of this team, we might have even collectively had them higher than 4. I might have even put them second. I don't know if I would have put them first, but maybe. But yeah, certainly the best tight end trio in the league, and it starts with the tight end 1, Travis Kelce, also having George Kittle, Dallas Goedert. I would argue it's got the best QB trio in the league as well. Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and then Ryan Tannehill. I'm probably higher than most on Tannehill, but even just the duo of Jackson and Dak, that gives a lot of high upside, but also really solid floor at quarterback. So now that, my advice was going to be to trade one of these tight ends for an RB1 or a wide receiver 1. I think that helps the maybe not the ultimate upside of the lineup, but it certainly helps, I think, give the flexibility, because the problem with, as much as, okay, the tight ends score so much and it's great to put them in your flex, but now the one issue this team has is that it has no flexibility. So for Cones of Dunshire, the problem you might run into is, those tight ends play earlier in the week. Maybe a couple of them play each other Thursday night, and then suddenly you get to Sunday and Monday night, and there's potential players that might be out. You might be stuck at, I have to replace them at a specific position. Whereas if you have those later Monday night players or Sunday night players in the flex spots, that helps give they're intended for, the flexibility of being able to move them out for any position. So I love overloading on tight end premium leagues when there's more flex spots. And yes, there are technically 3, but again, knowing you have Dak and Lamar Jackson, you really are using already one of those as a second quarterback spot. Suddenly there's the tight end spot and the 2 other flex spots. I love building around 2 of these tight ends, and I'm willing to accept, okay, I'm going to use the super flex spot for the extra quarterback. I will use one other flex spot to basically play this league as a 2 tight end league, start 2 tight ends, because you've got a Kelce plus someone else. But I would seriously consider moving either Kittle or Goddard. And I assume this team wants to keep Kelce and ride out Kelce's production because it's so massive. What return could you get that it's worth it? So I would look to try and shop Goddard, shop Kittle, and knowing it's a 2 PPR league for tight ends, I'm looking at, can I get a legit RB1 or a legit wide receiver 1? I do love the way this roster is constructed, just so much depth at running back. I think they've got 14 players at running back, if I'm not mistaken. The depth at wide receiver is basically non-existent. So even just flipping Goddard or Kittle for an elite wide receiver and a legit wide receiver 1 on this team, that probably makes a lot of sense, because I know Jeff's a 49ers fan, but I'm also high on Brandon Ayuk. But I think as the wide receiver 1 on the team, I think you can do better. I think there's room for that. But I rank this team really highly because I think you've got so much trade value. There's so many teams in this league where Dallas Goedert would be an upgrade at tight end. So they've cornered the market to create scarcity. But I think the best way to utilize that is to take that leverage in a trade. I don't want to go into the season with all 3 of these tight ends on roster.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think, this may have changed my ranking as well. If I had known the tight end premium part of it, I had it ranked at 5. So not terrible, but it definitely would have moved up a few spots because that tight end room is pretty solid. And, I agree with all the points that you made there as far as, trying to get that receiver 1, because you don't really have that guy that you can count on. You got some good pieces there, but you just don't have that alpha receiver there in that starting lineup.
And if we're so confident in this team winning, like, this is the team that I think we're collectively saying it's okay to sell your picks now. If you need to go get a true difference-making wide receiver and you have to spend a pick alongside your tight end to do it, I'm fine making that move.
Agreed.
Would you
go ahead, Shane?
I was just going to say, would you consider packaging like a Dak or who's the QB3 on this team?
Tannehill,
like one of those 2 and Kittle for an upgrade or something that maybe has a little more longevity at the running back position than Kamara or Connor?
I don't think I'd want to send Dak to get a running back though. Because like the way I see it, Dak and Bijan are basically going in the same parts of a startup. So to throw in a tight end on top of that to pivot from Dak to any young running back, I wouldn't do that. But I like the thinking Kittle and a draft pick to get a young running back, or Kittle and again maybe as much as you don't have many wide receivers, Quentin Johnston, can that be a good trade chip? Because he's so young, like maybe that there's a way to
still. Yep.
Maybe that's how you get your legit wide receiver one. Can you get I don't know. Can you get Amon-Ra? Can you get Garrett Wilson by making that trade? Because that team needs a tight end so much.
Yep. All right. Team number 3.
Number 3.
Team number 3 was ranked as high as 1 and as low as 5. And it is Team Ken Sucks. And Zach, this is your team here.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
I was the number 1. And the reason for that really came down to the quarterback room. It wasn't necessarily guys that I was per se high on, but there's guys that I know I could use as trade assets immediately. Specifically, players like Davis Mills, Hendon Hooker, Trey Lance, Sam Howell. Any of those guys, someone will want to roster, someone will want to pay some sort of price, and I think you can address the bench at other positions via that. Because your starting lineup, I don't want to just skip right over it, but this team looks set in place at the top. I feel comfortable with where they're at entering, a contending situation with that starting lineup. It's really just going to come down to depth. And I'm definitely nervous about some of the positions, especially, like wide receivers. I mean, you have some great names. Rashad Bateman as your wide receiver 4 is a great spot to be in. But when you have guys like Zay Jones, Michael Gallup, Jalen Tolbert, it's a lot of question marks around those guys, and if anyone gets hurt, you don't really have a lot of guys you can turn to. I mean,
I almost argue Michael Gallup might actually be the wide receiver 4 on this team, not Bateman. I'm kind of expecting the year removed from the ACL tear, he might actually rebound. So,
well, I like your optimism on Gallup. I'll gladly trade him to you if you want to be in a league of mine. Okay, so
you know what? Aren't you co-manager with Doc in the one league? Because I'm pretty sure you do have Gallup, and Doc won't trade him to me though. So
I'll sweet talk Doc. I'll let you know. I'll be reaching out to you privately. But no, I look at this team as well with someone like Irv Smith. I'm curious to see what he can look like in the Cincinnati offense. Obviously, there's been plenty of excitement about these plug-in tight ends that they just keep signing on 1 or 2 year deals. And we've been waiting for a while on Irv. He had some injuries, but who knows? With Burrow throwing him the rock, there might be some chances. But I think what needs to be emphasized around this team is you look like you have a clear direction. You know what you're trying to do. You're trying to compete. And that's where a lot of those quarterbacks, you need a QB3. Yes, you want that guy to fill in on the super flex for bye weeks or potential injury, but there's no need to have so many flyer quarterbacks that are potentially going to take a job here soon from someone else, or are that guy initially to come off the bat. And that's where I'm going to try and sell, especially someone like Sam Howell. I know we've heard about the UNC connection, but Jacoby Brissett, I think, is going to be the starter in my eyes. So that's where someone like Sam Howell, I want him gone now. And I know a QB has a premium. So therefore, those are the assets I want to get rid of right now, where I can get guys on my bench that I really feel great about. I know you have Gallup, like you mentioned, Kyle, where there's a little bit of wide receiver depth, 5, 6 wide receivers. I can feel comfortable with that. But it really comes down to the running backs. David Montgomery, who knows what Gibbs and Montgomery's roles are, and that could be really conflicting with trying to be in that win now spot. So that's where use those quarterbacks, get some running backs, and I'm excited to see how you do this year because I think you can win the damn thing.
Would you consider selling Trey Lance find the people in your league that think like this, right? That Purdy's trash. And I realize though, this is Ken, right? So we're probably talking about Ken saying Lance is the man, but if Ken can find someone else in the league that thinks like that, maybe that's the way to sell it.
Exactly. And that's because there's Trey Lance, Sam Howell, even someone at Hendon Hooker. There's enough believers out there where you can get some, relative return that's going to help you now, where you don't need to gut your bench. You don't need to sell your draft picks, but you can also be in a spot where you feel safe and secure for making a push this year and next year.
Yeah, great breakdown. I like this team as well. Looking at this roster, I mean, you have the potential QB1 in Josh Allen, the potential RB1 in Saquon Barkley. You can put AJ Brown, DK Metcalf in the top 3, top 4, as far as receivers go. And then Hawkinson can be the top guy, not named Travis Kelce, that could potentially be there at tight end. So a lot of positions that are very top heavy there, but I think the roster from top to bottom in that starting lineup is just, awesome. Go ahead.
I just wanted to touch on one last thing with the quarterbacks. I think there's enough reason to feel confident in what Russell can be with Sean Payton's offense, with the weapons around him, where you're purely just needing to decide which quarterback needs to be my third. You don't need that many, especially when they're all in very similar spots. And that's where I think there's enough opportunity to get returns elsewhere that you should take advantage of.
Yeah, I was going to say the one that I think I would try to move, it would be Hendon Hooker, the rookie. I go find out who has Matt Stafford, and I'm trying to trade Hendon Hooker to Matt Stafford. Sorry, not
Jared
Matt
Goff.
Jared Goff.
Jared
Sorry.
Goff, you dummy.
Sorry.
Those two will always be tied together, though.
They will be they're in my head tied together as well. But yes, whoever has Jared Goff and Hooker becomes more valuable.
Well, I don't know if this is the perfect transition, but I think we're getting to the team next that has Jared Goff.
You're absolutely right. Let's go ahead and get into that team. Number 2. Number 2 team ranked as high as 1, as low as 5, and it is team Golden Flyers. And Shane, this is your team, and they do indeed have Jared Goff.
They do have Jared Goff. I would be fine if you traded Hendon Hooker to this team. The only problem is part of my advice was going to be potentially trying to upgrade at QB2. I know Daniel Jones has a phenomenal year. He gives you a ton of rushing upside and a rushing floor. But him and Goff are not two people that really excite me. So I would be trying to figure out some type of package to move one or both of them to upgrade your QB2. That's the negative. The positive is I absolutely love this team. You have some of my absolute favorite players from top to bottom on your squad, starting with Justin Herbert and Travis Etienne. Then you've got Devontae Smith, JSN, and Michael Pittman Jr. in your wide receiver room. That's another phenomenal trio of wide receivers. And then you follow up with someone who I think could bounce back this year as well with Cortland Sutton. Tight end premium, Evan Ingram is great. And then on the bench, you've handcuffed Travis Etienne with my favorite rookie running back in Tank Bigsby. You've also got Michael Carter Jr., who's similar to Samaje Perine. I think has a ton of value for the first half of the year based on when Breece got hurt. Tyler Boyd's a great veteran wide receiver that gives you depth. I will say the same thing about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, even though I still think he has bricks for hands. And Jeff, I'm going to do it just for you and for this show. This is my impersonation of MVS trying to catch. He's got stones for hands. But then you've got Josh Downs, who I am absolutely in love with. I just took him in Scott Fishbowl, Russell Gage, another guy who's he's flex worthy as a ceiling, but nothing more than that. And then Alan Lazard. You do have one of my absolute least favorite players in the NFL in Devontae Parker. If he did not just get a giant contract, I would say cut him, but find somebody that you can trade him to because I just don't like him. And then wrapping this up with Cole Kmet is I'm still a Cole Kmet believer, but even though handcuffs aren't necessarily something that you typically see with tight end, you've handcuffed him with Robert Tonyan. So if Tonyan takes over, you're A-okay with your tight end room. That's the list of favorite people on the team. Now I'm going to give you a little more breakdown. Herbert's an elite option at QB, and I think he bounces back from having a less than stellar year because he was hurt a lot of last year and recovering from that. I already mentioned Etienne and Bigsby. I don't love Akers personally, but as your RB2 and with the opportunity that he has going forward for this year, you're set at RB2. And if you're not a believer like I am in Akers, once he gets that volume, whether he produces with it or not, I don't know, but you can probably trade him. And then your wide receiver room is great, but the other concern I have with it is I don't know if you have a true wide receiver one because Devontae is stuck behind A.J. Brown. Oh, shit. I just lost my tab. There we go. JSN is stuck behind DK and for this year, Tyler Lockett, but going like long-term has plenty of upside. MPJ is like your ticket for being a wide receiver one. And just with the rookie quarterback, I don't know how plausible that is this year. But long term, like you're set. And then your depth across all positions, I think, is phenomenal. Like I said, starting out, I would just try to upgrade your QB2 in some way, shape, or form, and I think you can be a contender pretty easily.
Yeah, I think they're contender with the way they're built already, but
Yeah.
getting the QB2 could definitely. Zach, you're shaking your head over there. You got something you want to say?
You need to put some respect on Daniel Jones and Jared Goff's names, okay?
No,
I like to refer to them as league-winning quarterbacks because they helped me win so many of my leagues last year. And these guys are just, I know they're not sexy. I
They're
understand
not,
there's
and that's-
bigger names, but I believe that was either QB9, QB10, or QB10 and QB11 this past year. And I feel great about them, especially Jared Goff, more specifically. They have so many weapons around them, and the team showed that they believe in him. They gave him an extension when, we were looking at, hey, maybe they'll do something in the draft. They're putting more weapons in place. There's a system in place that believes in them. And I think, yeah, I could see making a move, but I like where you're at, where to me, the move to make would be using some of those depth pieces to get in a more immediate productive guy in the JSN spot. I like JSN for the long term, but this team screams, hey, I'm ready to win now. I think Jones or Goff can be that QB2 to help get you there. But to me, I just don't like depending on rookies. It scares the hell out of me if I feel like I can contend. So my advice would be ride out these young guys, try and hold on to them as much as possible, but look for those aged vets where you can pay a relatively cheap price to help you win now, where you're not cleaning the farm to get them.
Maybe you go talk to what's that? The team we did in the beginning, was it Legion of Doom? Yeah, go talk to him and see what it takes to get Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp. See what if you can.
I like that.
Absolutely. And this is a team where I'd look at using my draft picks for that kind of stuff. I don't really like getting rid of my draft assets, but a team like that, the floor is so high where I have a hard time seeing them drop out of, that playoff hunt range. And that's where I would feel a lot more secure in getting rid of that draft.
Yeah.
To bridge, sorry, Jeff, but to bridge between Shane and Zach, unless you've got a quick point, I'm probably going to be a little bit here.
You're good. Go ahead.
The idea of what can, I like what Zach's saying, right? Like prioritize trades that'll help you win now, like getting that wide receiver 1 upgrade, maybe even getting an RB1 upgrade. I'm maybe not as big a believer in Etienne as Shane is. But there might be, because I think the problem is if you go from like Daniel Jones to, we'll say, trying to get Mahomes or any of the quarterbacks in those elite tiers, it's probably going to cost so much that you're maybe even going to have to make your starting lineup worse than it is now. Can you go get Tua, Daniel Jones to Tua? They're probably pretty close in dynasty rankings. Some might even have Daniel Jones ahead of Tua with all the concerns about injury. The truth is, this team already has Mike White, so you've already got that Tua insurance with the handcuff. And to Jeff's point, if you can also get Tyreek in another trade, trade away Jackson Smith and Jigma to get Tyreek Hill, you trade that way into that stack. That might help, because I think we all kind of expect this playoff team that could really help in the playoffs if spike weeks happen together.
Especially if Tyreek goes for 2,000 yards like he said he was going to do.
Mo said, go ahead, Zach.
I was just saying, I have a specific, it's not Legion of Doom. I want Tyler Lockett. If I want to wait on JSN, I'm going to get the other guy in Seattle that can just help me, because I think he's going to be cheaper.
Use draft picks to go.
Yes, because I don't want to really commit to the win now. I don't want to really move any of my major young pieces, because I think he can play both relatively. It's just, finding that right piece at a discounted price. I think getting that, I want to say Adam Thielen, but I don't trust it the same way in Carolina. But like, say Adam Thielen of a year or two ago in Minnesota, someone like that where they're, borderline past their prime, but they should be productive enough, because I think JSN can be that later in the year when you're in those playoff situations. It's just about trying to help my record as much early on so I can really secure that spot.
Yeah, I like that Lockett call because it would cost you a whole lot less.
Exactly.
And you could probably still keep JSN as your replacement once Lockett finally does move on. I like that.
I want to talk about what Shane was saying with selling Cam Akers. Do you even have to wait till in season? Because it seems like he's the starter right now. He might have a good value, and good performances in the season may not elevate it. The other thing too is, even if you're a contender, you can still make a move like sell Cam Akers for draft picks and then later on use those draft picks to buy other players. You like the player you want to get for Cam Akers, that manager may not be willing to do. But if you offer them draft picks, that might be the way to get that player. Sometimes you have to make that, make a second trade to beforehand in order to make the trade you really want.
And I would agree with Shane more about moving Jones or Goff if we were further along with this league where there are more teams that had stacked QB2s. But it's more or less when I'm looking at the rest of the rosters, Goff, Jones are comparable to the QB2s on almost any other team. So I'm just nervous about that premium you'd have to pay to really get someone to move off their QB1.
Yeah, good call. And I want to plug one more time. We plugged it at the beginning of the show, but Kyle just mentioned making a trade to make another trade. If y'all are on the Sleeper platform, you can do a 3-way trade, which I don't believe CBS will allow you to do. So another reason to get on Sleeper.
I've done a 7-team trade on there. It's possible.
My God.
That's insane. Okay. All right. Let's get to the number one team here.
Number one.
The number one team ranked as high as 1, obviously as low as 3. If you haven't figured it out who it is yet, it is the Barrel Makers. And Jerry, this is your squad here.
All right, so another team that has a nice strong mix of some youth, some veterans, a team that could compete for a championship this year, as well as build a nice strong team for their coming years. He's got 2 quarterbacks that one of them is probably a surefire QB1. The other one is a borderline QB1 with Burrow and Cousins. And then he's got another pair of quarterbacks that are starters. And in a league where every starter and backup and their children are rostered, you can trade one of these away and potentially get like an upgrade somewhere else. We already talked about a couple teams that only have 2 starters or they have 1.5 starter right now. And maybe you can move a Baker Mayfield or a Mac Jones who really aren't that fantasy relevant, but their bodies to throw into your quarterback spot or your super flex spot, move them down to some of the lower teams that we talked about earlier that could use a second or even third quarterback. But I would definitely keep one of them because you always want to have a third quarterback on your own team. Malik Willis, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, there's just talk in camp that he's playing better than Will Levis right now, but probably going to be all this year. And then as the season goes on, or as the years go on, probably looking at, I mean, the next quarterback might not even be on this roster, so I don't know if really Willis or Levis are worth anything there. Aiden O'Connell is another guy that's been getting some steam, especially with the Jimmy G injury news and all that stuff going on. So he's definitely a guy to hold on to and keep an eye on. Maybe you get some spot starts there, but ideally you shouldn't have to start any of these guys if Joe Burrow and Kirk Cousins are your 1-2 punch for the season. Getting into the running backs, nice, strong you got 3 stronger guys up top, and then you got a couple guys that I personally like for now and for the future. Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, Miles Sanders. That's going to be your 1-2-3 punch until Swift gets hurt. Then it's going to be McCaffrey and Sanders. Gus Edwards is a nice running back out there in Baltimore. It's basically just him and Dobbins. So you could always throw Edwards in the flex and get some boom weeks there. And talked a little bit about Cam Akers, but Zach Evans is right there in LA with him. He's another guy that is a rookie this year. He's a guy we saw all the Cam Akers stuff last year with potentially almost not even being on the team, being traded. And then he kind of had that resurgence at the end of the year. And now we're going into this year where it should be Cam to start the year. And if he has the kind of year that he had towards the end of the year, maybe he's the guy all year long. But if he doesn't, McVay is not afraid to switch to another guy, and Zach Evans could be the next man up. So definitely a guy to hold on to. He's a good future guy. Pierre Strong is another one being out there in New England. We've seen Ramondre have a little bit, he's not injury prone, but a little bit of injury history. They don't have Damian Harris anymore, so you could get some value out of Pierre Strong there. Maybe not necessarily 2023, but in the future there. Strong wide receivers, Jalen Waddle, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, Odell, they're paying. I don't know what you guys think about Odell anymore, but they are paying him some money. So he's definitely going to be on the field. For the most part, he's probably going to be out there in 2 wide receiver sets, whether it's Flowers or Bateman on the other side. I don't think Odell's going to be coming off the field too much. And then Hunter Renfrow still has some value. Jaden Reed for Green Bay, he has some value. So definitely a nice 5-6 pack of wide receivers that you could throw in 2-3 every week and feel comfortable there. And then Pat Fryermuth, Dalton Schultz, Trey McBride, Hunter Henry, all really spot starters, but with a 2-point tight end premium. Just play the matchups. McBride should get a nice little bump this year. Obviously Zach Ertz is still there, but I think the offense is leaning more towards having McBride have a bigger role. Dalton Schultz signed the 1 year in Houston. You always hear about having rookie quarterbacks having their tight end and their slot receivers as kind of the check, or not really the check, but like the safety blanket for them. So Dalton Schultz could have a quiet, nice PPR year, just getting the ball out of CJ Stroud's hands as fast as they can. So a decent quad of tight ends there. So overall, like I said, it's a good team to compete this year. The first move I would make is probably try to trade one of those backup quarterbacks that you got and try to upgrade somewhere else on this roster. Maybe throw another wide receiver in there, get a running back depth piece.
Can you try and sell Aiden O'Connell to the team that has Garoppolo?
Yeah, that's a good call. And I was going to say, we talked about on these PLPs before. We always have a debate on whether or not you should own, the handcuffs of your running backs or the handcuffs of other teams' running backs. And this guy is taking that second route there. He's got Zach Evans, of course, the handcuff to Cam Akers. Pierre Strong's probably the handcuff to Ramondre Stevenson. Sean Tucker is the handcuff to Rashad White. All those guys with one injury to that starter ends up having a lot more value. So those guys become instant flex spots, throughout the season. So I love that strategy there for sure. Anybody else want to chime in here on team number 1?
I just appreciated the same aspect you're already alluding to, Jeff, about the handcuffs. I just love hold my league mates by the balls and being like, all right, you got to pay up now because I know you're desperate. Your star guy is down. All right, time to cough up whatever I'm trying to get.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, talk
Kyle.
about handcuffs. Can you handcuff the handcuff? And Kevin Harris, is there a chance he might actually be the main handcuff to Pierre Strong? So I like freeing up a roster spot somehow, whether that's trading away somebody or, I'll be honest, is anyone opposed to just straight up cutting David Bell?
Yeah, I've already cut him in my league.
You're opposed, Zach?
Who am I kidding now?
Try and sell him first, perhaps. Maybe you can get
it's tough. It's tough with someone like David Bell because part of me wants to keep him, but realistically, with this league just starting, if someone really valued the potential chance of him being more, they would have already taken him.
This is the team that probably values the most since they took him in the startup.
Yes.
But if you can't get a fourth for him, try and spam the whole league if you have to. But if every single manager rejects him for a fourth, you're better off just cutting him and picking up another running back.
Now, I will say there's one more strategy you could do. Everybody thinks draft picks. I do this a lot in my league where, we have Fab, obviously. I will sell a guy for Fab. I will, instead of dropping him and making everyone bid on a guy, just say, hey, anybody got any Fab for this guy, before I drop him and see if you can sell him for Fab. So
that's a good point, Jeff. Now I did, Shane, this
comment
overrated.
I don't know if CBS you can trade for Fab, but you can on Sleeper.
Again, the plug. We're not sponsored by Sleeper. We're sponsored by Underdog, in fact.
But Sleeper makes my job so much easier.
Yes.
Sorry, I guess I lost the comments.
My comment about overrated.
You're saying overrated. You're talking about Beckham here?
Yes, absolutely.
Shane?
He's 30 years old, coming off of a second ACL tear. Didn't play at all last year. At his ceiling to me is a wide receiver 2 at best.
But what he paid for him, that would be good if he can hit his ceiling. I think it's worth a shot. I mean, The Ravens took a shot. They paid him $15 million a year to go potentially be a receiver 2.
Yeah, Barrel Makers didn't make $15 million to pay to Beckham. Startup pick is a little cheaper than that, unless the buy-in's $15 million. But
this is
I don't know. I think the fact that he's removed, now he's going to be more than a full year removed from that ACL tear in that Super Bowl a couple seasons ago. I wonder if I think there's a shot, a chance. I don't know how likely it is, but I think that there's a chance that he's the number one wide receiver on the team. Number one target seems like a big stretch because Mark Andrews monopolizes that.
Yeah.
But Bateman, to me, hasn't shown enough to say that that's standing in the way of if Beckham's back healthy, Bateman's not standing in his way. And I don't think Zay Flowers is quite ready yet. If Beckham's back healthy, I think he could smash this year. So I almost think he might be underrated. But if he's not healthy and these injuries linger through the season, then it's awful useless, and they're gonna have to. The Ravens are gonna have to probably rely on Zay Flowers being their wide receiver one as a rookie.
Yep. Because
I'm not a big Bateman believer. I think he hasn't shown enough yet. And by this point, he should have shown something as a first-round receiver. Maybe this year in the new offensive coordinator, this is the offense for Bateman to thrive in. But
and I was a big Bateman guy.
He's played 18 games total, though. That's why I'm not
basically
ready
the
to give
equivalent
up
of a rookie season
on Bateman yet.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't given up on him, but I'm down on him. I was really high on him. I actually famously traded back. I could have had Jalen Waddle. I traded back so that I could get Bateman in my home league.
Idiot.
I definitely regret that.
I mean, I definitely saw Bateman go 107 in a league. Someone took him ahead of Waddle and Devontae Smith. So you're not that much of an idiot, Jeff.
Not that much of an idiot. Still implying I'm a little bit of an idiot.
Aren't we all, though?
Yes.
Thanks for bringing all of us idiots on, Jeff.
Yeah. All right, that wraps the podcast up. We'll go around the room real quick. Give these guys your Twitter handle, where they can find you, where they can, tell you how wrong you were about their team. We will start with you, Jerry.
You can find me on Twitter at Jerry Wilkie FM, and you can find me on Facebook too, just Jerry Wilkie. More likely to get a hold of me there. I use Facebook more than I use Twitter. I run the IDP podcast during the season on Saturday nights, Cover Zero IDP, and then me and Raul run the Fantasy Assessment Show, brand new show that's out now. It's in the Discord where you can drop your roster, similar to it's like a 1/12 of a PLP. Drop your roster, and we'll basically just go over your roster specifically, what we think you should do, trade away, target, stuff like that, and just basically a podcast just for roster itself called the Fantasy Assessment.
Good stuff. Shane.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at FFShaneB, and if you're affected or not affected by Alzheimer's, or your family has been affected by Alzheimer's, sign up for Polly's Playoff at pollysplayoff.com.
Good stuff. Great charity. Zach.
You can find me on Twitter at Behind the Zach. Otherwise, you can find me bouncing around the Going for Two network during the season, Sunday mornings, hour before all the games kick off. You can find me hosting our Sunday pregame show. We go over your daily fantasy, but also start-sit questions and the latest injury news there.
Good stuff. And Kyle.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Senra Says. I host 2 shows on the Going for Two live network. I should say, I host one solo. Press coverage. Our next episode will be on Monday, July 24th, 8 p.m. Eastern. I've got Bobby J all day, who's on Twitter. He and I were Scott Fishbowl league mates last year in the Letterkenny division. And,
nice.
Couldn't get him on last year, but glad to be able to get him on this year. And then I also co-host the Dynasty Gambit. Our next episode will be July 27th, and that's every 2 Thursdays. And we talk about Dynasty fantasy football. So I'm sure all the land of this league mates here would all love to listen to that. Outside of Going for Two, I've got full press coverage. I contribute to, write articles in season and sometimes some off season as well. I also have 2 podcasts: the Full Press Fantasy Pod and the Full Press Packers Pod. Go Pack.
And Kyle also is he's like in every chat for every podcast as well. Kyle is like the podcast holder of the Going for Two network, and then Jamie, if he's still in the chat, he's also in all the chats.
I prefer podcast slut to podcast whore. I don't know why.
They may be podcast sluts or whores. We love them the same nonetheless.
All right, guys. Once again, thank you for your purchase. The guys always enjoy doing these. We really love breaking these teams down. And I think it was Jerry, or maybe it was Kyle or Zach. Someone mentioned the Discord. We do have a Discord channel. We have a little over 1,000 people in our Discord now.
I dropped the link on YouTube for you.
Nice. Appreciate that. You can find the link in my Twitter profile. If you don't see it on YouTube, it's in my Twitter profile, or you can go to the website goingfor2.com. Bottom right corner, you'll see the little Discord logo. You can click on that and join there as well. It's a great community, lots of smart people in there. You can ask questions, answer questions, whatever you want to do, or you can be like Shane and just be in there and then not actually come in there.
I hate Discord. You're lucky I was able to figure out how to share the freaking link.
And I always go from Discord right to the underdog promo. I don't know if we do that for PLPs.
Yep, go ahead. Yeah, you got it on the screen there, Kyle.
Well, join Underdog Fantasy today for anyone in this league who wants a different challenge, playing best ball leagues or having money to use on pick'ems for different sports or individual players or game results and game totals. Head over to Underdog Fantasy. You can scan the QR code on video. If you're listening audio only, you can use the promo code GF2 and they will double your deposit match up to $100. So for anyone who hasn't joined Underdog Fantasy yet, this is a great opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. We actually have a segment on the Going for Two live network on our Armchair Fantasy show where we go through pick'ems each week now. We're doing that. So Underdog's a great app.
Yep,
All
it
right.
really is. I love them so much. They do the pick'ems though. That's the parlays, right?
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah,
yeah.
It's just like your standard betting app in that way. I mean, I wasn't really sure. Every app's a little different in that way, but definitely check it out because it might be worded a little different, but it's essentially your parlays as well as daily fantasy.
Yep, definitely. All right, guys. For Kyle, for Zach, for Shane, for Jerry, I'm Jeff. Hopefully we see y'all next year.